really do a deep dive into Kanye West's Sunday service.
Oh, okay.
That Christian gospel series that he started back in 2019.
Right.
And things seem to be taking a pretty sharp turn.
Yeah, definitely seems like it's raising some eyebrows,
Yeah, for sure.
There was a recent article from Hip Hop DX highlighting some interesting developments, particularly around this new recruitment drive.
Oh, really? So they're bringing in some new people.
Yeah, it seems like they're looking for some fresh faces for the choir.
Okay.
I mean, you think, okay, new members, that's normal.
Sure. Yeah.
But then, you get to the specifics, and that's where things get a little strange.
Oh, okay. What do you mean?
So the article points to Kanye's Instagram post announcing these open auditions specifically for male choir members.
Okay.
But the real kicker is they have to have shaved heads.
Shaved heads. Okay.
Yeah.
So initially you might just think, oh, that's just, a stylistic choice.
Right.
But when you consider the context and the timing of everything, it starts to feel like there's maybe more to it.
Yeah, especially when you look at Kanye's recent behavior and his public behavior.
Right.
This isn't happening in a vacuum. The article goes on to mention some pretty disturbing things.
Like what?
Like him wearing a swastika t-shirt, even saying that he loves Hitler.
Yeah, and let's not forget the whole anti-Semitic sound comment that he made about his upcoming album.
Right.
It's hard to ignore those kinds of statements.
Yeah, especially when they're coupled with this new, very specific aesthetic for Sunday service.
Totally, and that's where things get really tricky.
Yeah.
Sunday service at its core was about gospel music, spirituality, and community.
Right.
But how do you reconcile that with this new imagery and the rhetoric that Kanye's been using?
Exactly, and that's what makes it so tricky.
Yeah.
I mean, how might this impact the people that were drawn to the original message of Sunday service?
Yeah, the folks who found solace and inspiration in the music and the community.
Exactly. It's hard to say for sure, but you have to imagine this new direction could alienate a lot of those people.
For sure.
There's this dissonance, a clash between the initial appeal of Sunday service and these very real, very dangerous implications of the ideology Kanye seems to be flirting with.
It's a tough pill to swallow.
It is. Yeah, and it's not just about alienating people. We also have to consider the potential impact this could have on a wider scale.
You're talking about a ripple effect, right? Like how this could influence perceptions of and maybe even normalize some pretty dangerous ideas.
Exactly. Kanye has this huge platform, a global audience.
Right.
And these actions, they carry weight. When someone with that level of influence starts aligning themselves with hate symbols and rhetoric, it can have some serious consequences.
It's interesting. We talk about hate symbols, but what does that even really mean? Like a shaved head on its own isn't inherently hateful, right?
Right, but it's all about context. Historically, the shaved head has been associated with certain extremist groups, particularly skinheads. And when you combine that visual with Kanye's recent statements praising Hitler, talking about an anti-Semitic sound, it creates a very specific and very troubling picture.
So it's like he's co-opting this imagery, this really loaded symbolism, and weaving it into Sunday service. But what's the purpose? Is it just provocation, or is there something deeper, something more insidious at play?
It's hard to say definitively. I mean, Kanye's always been a provocateur, someone who pushes boundaries, challenges the status quo.
Right.
Some might argue that this is just another example of that, a way to kind of disrupt and provoke a reaction.
But is there a line? I mean, can you really separate the art from the artist when the art itself is promoting harmful ideologies?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And there's no easy answer. It's a debate that each individual has to grapple with for themselves.
It's definitely complex, and I think it's important to acknowledge that there are multiple perspectives here. Not everyone will agree on the interpretation of Kanye's actions or the potential impact they might have.
Absolutely, and that's why these conversations are so important.
Yeah.
We need to be willing to engage with these complexities, to challenge our own assumptions and biases, and to consider the perspectives of others.
It's not about silencing dissenting voices or shutting down debate. It's about fostering a space where we can critically examine these issues and work towards a better understanding.
And speaking of understanding, let's shift gears for a moment and talk about the historical context here. We can't just gloss over the fact that the symbols and rhetoric Kanye is using are deeply rooted in a painful and traumatic past.
You're talking about the Holocaust, the rise of Nazism, the persecution of Jews and other minority groups. These aren't just abstract concepts,
Right.
They represent real suffering, real loss.
Exactly. And it's crucial to remember that those wounds are still fresh for many people.
Yeah.
So when someone like Kanye, with his influence and platform, starts invoking those symbols, It can trigger those wounds and perpetuate a cycle of hate and fear.
You're right. This isn't just about Kanye's personal beliefs or artistic expression. It's about the potential for real-world harm.
And that's something we can't afford to ignore.
So where do we go from here? What are the implications of all this for Kanye's legacy for the future of Sunday service? I mean, it feels like we're at a crossroads.
It does, doesn't it? And the path forward is uncertain.
Yeah.
But one thing's clear, we need to keep talking, keep asking questions, keep challenging the status quo.
And maybe, just maybe through those conversations, we can start to find some answers, some solutions.
Yeah.
Solutions that promote understanding, empathy, and a world where hate and extremism have no place.
Well said. That's a goal worth striving for. And I think it's a goal that resonates with the spirit of what Sunday service was originally about: community, connection, and hope.
Okay, let's take a moment to reflect on everything we've discussed. We've covered a lot of ground, from the specifics of this new recruitment drive to the broader implications of Kanye's actions. But before we wrap up, I want to leave you with something to ponder.
I'm all ears.
If Kanye continues down this path, if he keeps intertwining his art with extremist ideology, what does that mean for his legacy? Can we separate the artist from the art, or will his work forever be tainted by his choices?
That's a profound question, and it's one that each of us has to answer for ourselves. There's no easy answer, no right or wrong response. It's about personal reflection, critical thinking, and engaging in open and honest dialogue. You know, it's interesting how this situation really, brings to light the power of symbols and how their meaning can evolve and be manipulated.
For sure. Take the shaved head, for example.
Right.
It's not inherently hateful. But in this context, with everything else that Kanye has been saying and doing, it takes on a whole new layer of significance.
Yeah, it becomes a sort of visual shorthand, a way of signaling a particular ideology or affiliation without explicitly saying it. And that's what's so dangerous about it. It can be used to subtly normalize and spread these harmful ideas, especially among those who might be more susceptible to them.
It's like a dog whistle almost.
Right.
Where only certain people pick up on the true meaning behind it.
Exactly.
And that makes it even harder to combat because it's not always overt or easily identifiable.
Right, and that's why critical thinking is so crucial in these situations. We can't just take things at face value.
Yeah.
We have to be willing to dig deeper, to question our assumptions, and to consider the broader context in which these symbols are being used.
It's about media literacy, too.
Oh, absolutely.
Being aware of how information is presented, who's presenting it, and what their motivations might be.
Right. Being able to identify potential biases, agendas, and misinformation.
Exactly.
It's a lot of work, but it's essential in today's world where we're constantly bombarded with information from all sides.
So, circling back to Kanye and Sunday service, what do you think this all means for the future of the movement? Can it survive this, or has it been irrevocably tarnished?
It's hard to say. It really depends on how this all plays out, how Kanye responds to the backlash, and whether he's willing to course correct.
Right.
I mean, if he doubles down on this extremist rhetoric, it's hard to imagine Sunday service retaining its original appeal or maintaining its audience.
And what about his fans? The people who have been following him for years, who have been inspired by his music and his message. How do they reconcile this new Kanye with the artist they once admired?
That's a tough question, and I think it's something a lot of people are grappling with right now.
Yeah.
Some might choose to disavow him completely, distance themselves from his work and his message.
Yep.
Others might try to rationalize his behavior to separate the art from the artist, and still others might find themselves somewhere in between, wrestling with their own feelings of disappointment, betrayal, and confusion.
It's a complex situation with no easy answers.
Yeah.
But I think one thing is clear. This is a pivotal moment, not just for Kanye, but for the culture as a whole.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that even those we admire, those we hold up as icons, are capable of falling from grace.
And it's a reminder that we have a responsibility to hold them accountable, to challenge their harmful actions and rhetoric, and to create a world where hate and extremism are not tolerated.
Well said. It's been a truly thought-provoking deep dive, and I hope our listeners will continue to engage with these issues and have these difficult conversations, because ultimately it's through dialogue, empathy, and understanding that we can create a more just and equitable world.
Absolutely. Let's keep learning, keep questioning, and keep pushing for positive change.
And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive. As always, thank you for joining us, and we encourage you to continue exploring this topic and forming your own opinions based on further research and critical thinking. Until next time, keep diving deep.